Phase 4 was very underwhelming for longtime Marvel fans, and Phase 5 was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be bold and unique, and they have outlined all of these massive projects that are in the works. But so far, it isn't looking much better because the first film to release, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, has been reviewed by critics, and it's rotten. I have a bunch of things to show off, but before we get into the topic at hand, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and to the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted. And of course, if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon or a supporter via YouTube memberships. So yes, as you can see, the first reviews for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania are out, and they are not looking very good. Now, with this film, I personally didn't have a lot of hype with it because Phase 4 was very underwhelming for me personally. There was like two decent projects that I had time enjoying, but overall it just wasn't what I was expecting, and I know a lot of you feel the same way. And of course, I like to be positive. I like to think towards the future about better, good content, and I want to be hopeful, but so far things are looking pretty rough for Marvel. So as you can see, it is sitting at a 58% with 95 reviews, and anything under a 60 is technically rotten on this site. So it is at rotten, and critics are saying that visually it is a very pretty movie. They definitely bumped up their CGI and they did a great job with it. So the first few reviews say things like Quantumania is proof, if we still needed it, that bigger isn't always better. In growing to typical Marvel size, it shrinks away the fun. Now, this is a problem that we have seen with Marvel, is that they have done so many giant, crazy things in films that they continue to try to one-up their last project, and it seems, while in some ways they typically are able to, maybe it's CGI wise, like in this case, the story falls flat or character development falls flat because they were too worried with making it as big and colorful and basically as shiny as possible, yet other elements just don't live up to the expectations, because at this point there are so many movies like this, we have extremely high expectations. Quantumania ultimately serves neither Ant-Man nor Kang by pitting them against each other, going for big and small at the same time. I personally didn't really feel any hype behind Kang. I do really like Ant-Man. The previous films have been pretty good. The first one was really good. Ant-Man and the Wasp was a little bit worse in my opinion. It wasn't a god-awful movie, but I was hoping that they would get back on track with this film, and I definitely have more worries now. Marvel's mini-hero swaps charm for epic bad call. That is something with Ant-Man, is that it did have charm. I feel like Paul Rudd really played this character well. We saw how, the characters interacted, and it was really good, and it just seems like they have given up, as it says, any kind of charm for epic. And I understand that, people want to see bigger, more epic projects, but at the same time, we also need them to be good story-wise. Pretty doesn't make up for good writing. I'm sorry, I'll just say it. It's a quantum mess. It's bad enough that it recycles tired cliches of Marvel movies. This uneven superhero film also rips off 1977 Star Wars in many ways. Jonathan Majors' standout performance can't save this substandard spectacle. Feels unsure of its own journey, losing its personality in a sea of overt CGI and poorly executed humor that sadly cheapens whatever genuine wit Jeff Loveness' script manages to occasionally muster. Now, I don't trust reviewers. I have always said this. I never ever will, but typically they rate these movies very high. They typically love the newest Marvel films, probably because of half of them are being paid off by Marvel, but regardless, I was actually expecting this to be a film that critics absolutely loved and users disliked. So again, I don't really trust critic scores. Maybe audiences will love this. Maybe they will say, you know what, this is actually fantastic and the critics are wrong. And honestly, I hope that that happens. I hope that this is a better movie than the critics are now saying it is, but seeing a 58% is definitely rough. Obviously, a 58% isn't the worst score that a film could get, but it's definitely not great, and there are some reviewers who are being generous and saying it's actually a pretty decent film, and I want to read some of those too. They said, Quantumania starts out on a messy note. The story and visual effects are all over the place until Kang enters the picture. His haunting presence allows the film to find focus and become more entertaining. The third act is much better, and the humor mostly works. A 6.5 out of 10. Still isn't great, but isn't terrible. The next is a 4 out of 5, saying Quantumania is colorful, original, and different, and corrects the mistakes that Marvel has made during these 3 years of experimentation. Though the stakes feel lackluster, and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania trudges along at times rather than galloping at a clip, Marvel's goodwill might make the film worthwhile. So even these very positive reviews, or the ones that are trying to be generous, still aren't, 9 out of 10s and even 10 out of 10s. They still have some pretty big problems with this film, so I'm just curious to see what it's going to end up at for users. And to top off all of this bad news, going over to this tweet that was made by Discussing Films, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has become the second MCU film to get a rotten rating. It might still go up because, again, 95 critic reviews. Usually we see like 200 or so by the time a movie releases, after a couple of days of them, releasing. But yeah, things are not looking good for this film at this point. I've said it, I thought that the MCU should have had a bit of a break after Endgame. I thought that that would have been a fine place to leave off. Not forever. We know that they wanted to milk these characters and stories for all they're worth, but I feel like they really needed to sit down and think about the direction they wanted to go. And there's a lot of MCU films now that make absolutely no sense, like The Eternals. They've only been referenced twice and in very, very minor ways. I just feel like they're creating a lot of projects, hoping things are gonna stick, but less characters and storylines are sticking with consumers these days, potentially because of superhero fatigue. But hey, a good superhero film can get audiences interested and can still sell well. They're just pushing out so much content that we get much more mediocre content these days. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this and found it important and informative, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.